My name is Kelsey Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and I know what it feels like to be used by the people who were supposed to love me most. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't family. I was a wallet with legs, a safety net they could drop into whenever they burned their own bridges. And the cruelest part? For years, I believed that was love. I believed that if I kept giving, kept saving them one day, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at my brother. I can still see that night clearly. I had just finished a double shift at the hospital, my scrub sticky with sweat exhaustion pulling at my bones. But I was proud. The night before, my mom had cried in my arms, thanking me for saving our family home. My dad, a man who had never hugged me growing up, wrapped me in the tightest embrace I had ever felt and whispered, "You're our hero." For one fleeting moment, I thought I mattered. I thought I was finally enough. I had paid off $280,000 of their debt. Every dime. I drained my savings, maxed out my credit cards, and even took out a loan in my own name to stop the bank from taking our house. The house I grew up in, the porch where I had blown out 5 birthday candles, the stairs I used to sneak down on Christmas mornings. To lose it would have been like losing a limb. So I bled myself dry to keep it. That night, we had dinner together. They smiled at me, posted pictures online about how proud they were of me, how I was their angel, their rock. For once I thought maybe I had stepped out of the shadow of my brother Evan, the golden child who never faced consequences, who ruined cars, lost jobs, cheated girlfriends, and still somehow was always protected. I thought maybe this was the turning point, but when I pulled into the driveway the next evening, something was wrong. The curtains were gone. The flower beds my mom used to fuss over were ripped up. The driveway was empty. My stomach sank as I rushed to the front door, my keys shaking in my hand. Inside, the house was gutted, stripped bare. On the floor sat a single white envelope with my name scrawled across it. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside, in my father's rushed handwriting, were the words that burned into me forever. "Thanks for fixing our credit, loser. We moved to Florida with your brother. Don't call." No signature, no apology, just that. I dropped the letter, my knees giving out beneath me. I sat on the floor of the house I had saved, the house they had abandoned, and I felt like my chest had been ripped open. Neighbors walked by and waved as if nothing was wrong. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn something down. Instead, I just sat there in the hollow silence, the taste of betrayal thick on my tongue. But then something strange happened. I smiled. Because what my parents didn't know, what they never even bothered to ask, was that when I paid off the mortgage, I had the deed transferred quietly into my own name. Every document signed, notarized, and filed. Their little scheme to run off with the money wasn't just cruel, it was illegal. And in 24 hours, they were about to learn what it meant to betray the wrong daughter. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the porch watching the sunset spill across the grass. Like blood, the letter crumpled in my fist. They thought they had used me, discarded me, erased me. What they didn't realize was that for the first time in my life, I had stopped trusting their words and started reading the fine print. Let me tell you how it all began 6 months earlier. At the time, I was sleeping in my car after a 12-hour shift. My ex had kicked me out, and though I had been crashing with a friend for a while, I didn't want to be a burden anymore. That night, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was panicked, choked with sobs. "Kelsey, we're going to lose the house. Your father made some bad investments. We're $280,000 in the hole." I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The house wasn't just wood and nails, it was the last anchor of my childhood. "What about the money you inherited from Grandpa?" I asked, desperate. "Oh, sweetie," Mom sniffled. "We used it to help your brother start his business. You know how hard it's been on him." Of course, Evan, always Evan. The golden child who could do no wrong even when he ruined everything he touched. Still, I couldn't bear to watch my childhood home get auctioned off. So I did the unthinkable. I liquidated everything I had. My savings, my credit, even loans I swore I'd never take. And I showed up at the bank with a manila folder full of cashier's checks. My parents stared at me like I had performed a miracle. Mom dropped to her knees, whispering, "You're an angel." Dad smiled like he had won the lottery. They cooked me dinner that night, took photos, and posted online about their hero daughter. And me, I was just happy to be seen. That's the part that stings the most. I wasn't just robbed of money, I was robbed of the illusion that they loved me as much as they loved him. But that illusion is dead now, and so is the daughter who let them bleed her dry. I hardly slept after finding that note. My body was drained, but my mind was burning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words. Thanks for fixing our credit, loser. It was like a brand scorched into my brain. They hadn't just betrayed me, they mocked me. They laughed while stripping me bare. And yet beneath the fury, a strange calm had taken root. Because this time I had something they didn't know: leverage. I drove back to the county clerk's office the next morning with my copy of the deed in hand. The woman behind the counter, kind and brisk, confirmed what I already knew. Yes, Miss Monroe, this property is in your name alone. Your parents relinquished all rights when the mortgage was satisfied. She gave me a sympathetic look, as though she could see the storm in my eyes. If anyone tries to claim it, they'll be the ones trespassing. I walked out with that paper pressed to my chest, and for the first time in years, I felt tall. My parents thought they had run off with my money. In truth, they had run off from my house, and I was going to make sure the whole world knew. That night, I called Evan's old business partner, a man named Cole, who had been burned by Evan in a shady investment scheme years back. He didn't mince words when he heard my voice. If you're calling about Evan, I want nothing to do with him. I'm not asking you to, I said evenly, but I thought you'd like to know he's back to his old tricks. Florida new startup, funded with money that wasn't his. I let the silence hang until Cole chuckled bitterly. Classic Evan. Thanks for the tip. One call. That was all it took to start unraveling their shiny new beginning. Evan had left a trail of wreckage before, and all it needed was a little push for his enemies to smell blood again. But revenge wasn't enough. I wanted truth. I wanted accountability. So I hired a lawyer, Rachel Green, who specialized in financial fraud. We pored over every transaction, every forged document. My father had signed my name on certain papers without me even realizing it. My mother had withdrawn from accounts I hadn't touched in years. Their entire house of cards was built on my back. When Rachel looked up from the pile of evidence, her eyes were sharp. Kelsey, you don't just have a civil case. You could pursue criminal charges. The idea made my stomach churn. Pressing charges against my own parents felt like betraying myself. But then I remembered the shed full of my things when I was 16, because Evan wanted a studio. I remembered the nights I came home starving while he was given takeout and cash. I remembered the bruises on my spirit hidden behind years of smiling family photos. They already chose betrayal, I whispered. Now it's my turn. The first time Mom called after they left her number flashing on my phone, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Her voice was falsely sweet, the same tone she used when asking for favors. Kelsey. Sweetheart, we're getting settled in Florida. It's wonderful here. Beaches, sun, fresh start. You should come visit. I laughed so hard it startled her. Visit Mom, you stole from me. You left me with nothing. There was a pause, and then her mask slipped. Oh, come on. You're fine. You'll bounce back. You always do. Don't be so dramatic. Dramatic. That word sliced me open. She had always said it when I cried as a child, when I asked why Evan got more, when I begged her to notice me. And now, after $280,000 of my blood and sweat, she still dared to say it. I hung up without another word. My hands shook, but not from weakness. From rage so sharp it felt like glass under my skin. Weeks passed and letters began arriving from their creditors. They had burned through the cash already. Evan's new venture collapsed within months. They had tried to refinance a condo in Florida, only to discover their credit was still radioactive. And when they tried to come back to reclaim the house they thought they still owned, they found the locks changed. Their keys didn't work. Their names weren't on the deed. And when they tried to argue with the neighbors, the sheriff was called by me. I watched from the porch as they stood on the curb, Evan raging, Mom crying. Dad's face twisted with disbelief. They looked at me like I was the traitor, but all I felt was peace. You chose this, I said softly, mostly to myself, not me. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because people like my parents and my brother don't just vanish quietly. They fight, they scheme, they crawl back when you least expect it. And I was ready. This time I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. They didn't just crawl back once they came clawing over and over like shadows that refused to die. The first letter arrived by certified mail stamped with the name of a Florida law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a demand that I return the family home to its rightful owners, my parents, because they claimed I had tricked them into signing away their rights. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands, and for a moment old fear surged up. The little girl in me, the one who was always told she was too dramatic, too selfish, too difficult, wanted to crumble. But then I reminded myself I hadn't forged anything. I hadn't lied. They had signed those papers willingly, too arrogant to imagine I would ever protect myself. Rachel, my lawyer, barely blinked at the letter. She slid it across her desk, her lips curling into a smirk. This isn't a threat. It's desperation. We'll respond formally, but you need to understand they don't have a case. You do. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, how they had wasted no time painting me as the villain. Family gatherings, neighbors, distant relatives. I started hearing the whispers. Kelsey stole the house. She tricked her parents. People who hadn't lifted a finger to help them now suddenly had opinions about me. And then came the phone call I'll never forget. It was Dad. His voice was low, sharp, with venom. "You think you're clever? You embarrassed us. Everyone knows what you did. You'll pay for this." For a second, my breath hitched. But then I remembered his note. "Thanks for fixing our credit, loser." And I realized the truth. I had already paid over and over for years, and I was done. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I simply said, "No, Dad. For the first time, you'll pay." And I hung up. A week later, their case against me collapsed in court. The judge reviewed the paperwork, the notarized deed, the records of my payments, and dismissed their claim within minutes. Dad's face went purple with rage. Mom wept. Evan stormed out like a child denied dessert. And me, I sat there calm, my hands folded, letting the weight of years lift off my chest. But the fight had left scars. At night I lay awake wondering how I had ever believed their words of love. I replayed every sacrifice, every moment I worked myself to exhaustion, to save people who saw me as disposable. And the worst part was realizing how much of myself I had given away, trying to earn something that was never offered their respect. One evening, Alyssa came over with takeout and cheap wine. She found me sitting on the porch staring at the twilight. "You okay?" she asked. I shook my head slowly. I won, but why does it feel so empty? She sat beside me, nudging my shoulder. "Because you weren't just fighting for a house, Kels. You were fighting for their love. And you finally know you're never going to get it." Her words broke something open in me. For so long I had been chasing scraps, hoping one more sacrifice, one more act of loyalty, would finally make me worthy in their eyes. But the truth was brutal and freeing all at once. I had always been worthy. They had just chosen not to see it. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to spend another breath trying to win them back. I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. This house, this life, this future, it was mine now, not theirs. And in that quiet moment, watching the stars prick the sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. But peace is fragile. And the storm wasn't over yet. Because my brother Evan, stripped of his Florida fantasy, was about to come knocking with a vengeance of his own. And he wouldn't come quietly. Evan's knock came 3 weeks later, long after the dust from court had settled. It wasn't polite, it wasn't hesitant. It was the kind of pounding that rattles windows, a demand rather than a request. I opened the door to find him standing there, thinner than I remembered, his eyes bloodshot, his jaw tight with barely contained rage. He didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed past me into the living room, muttering curses under his breath. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" He spat, spinning to face me. "Sitting here in this house like some kind of queen while the rest of us suffer." I crossed my arms, keeping my voice calm even as my heart hammered. "This house is mine, Evan. Legally, you and Mom and Dad chose to walk away." His laugh was hollow, bitter. "Chosen. You tricked them. You took advantage when they were vulnerable. You stole everything from us." That word "stole" made something in me snap. I stepped closer, meeting his glare with my own. I stole Evan. I paid off $280,000. Money. I worked for money I bled for. While you were gambling, drinking, blowing cash on your scams, I was working double shifts. If anyone stole, it was you. From me. From Grandpa. From everyone who ever believed in you. For a moment, his bravado cracked. His eyes darted away, his lips tightening. But then he sneered, latching onto his favorite weapon, contempt. You're pathetic. Always the victim. Always whining that no one appreciates you. Maybe if you weren't so unlovable, Mom and Dad wouldn't have chosen me over you. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. I let the silence hang heavy before I said low and steady. They didn't choose you because you were better. They chose you because you were easier. Because enabling you meant they didn't have to face the truth about themselves. You're not the golden child, Evan. You're the anchor that's been drowning us all. His face twisted fury, battling with shame. You'll regret this, he hissed, then stormed toward the door. But before he left, he turned back, his voice shaking. You think you won. But karma's coming for you, Kelsey. Don't forget that. The door slammed, the sound echoing through the empty house. I stood there in the quiet, my hands trembling, tears burning my eyes. Not because his words hurt, they didn't nod anymore, but because I finally understood he wasn't just broken. He was never going to change. The next day I got a call from Rachel. She had been following up on the case, tracking assets and debts tied to my parents and Evan. Her voice was steady but laced with something like satisfaction. Kelsey, you won't believe this. Evan's facing multiple lawsuits in Florida, fraud, unpaid debts, breach of contract. He's about to lose everything. For a long moment, I said nothing. My brother's threats from the night before replayed in my head, but instead of fear, I felt a strange calm. Karma wasn't coming for me. It was already at his door. News trickled back over the next few weeks. Evan's car repossessed, his accounts frozen, his so-called business partners turning on him. Mom and Dad stuck in a cramped rental, their credit ruined beyond repair, the Florida fantasy collapsing into dust. And me? I stayed in this house they thought they'd stolen, planting flowers in the garden. Mom once loved repainting the walls with colors that felt like mine. Every stroke of the brush was a reclamation, a declaration I survived you. And I am free. Still late at night, I'd catch myself staring at old family photos, grief curling inside me. Because no matter how much justice I won, no matter how thoroughly karma found them, the truth was bitter. I hadn't just lost parents and a brother. I had lost the illusion that they ever truly loved me. But maybe that was the point. Maybe letting go of that illusion was the only way to finally live. And as the sun set over the porch I had saved with my own hands, I whispered to myself, this is my home, my life, my future, and I won't let them take it from me again. If my story touched you, if you've ever given everything only to be betrayed, know this, you are not alone. You don't have to keep bleeding for people who only see you as a tool. You deserve better. If my words resonated, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so we can keep building this community together. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever been betrayed by the very people you trusted most? I'd love to hear your story.